Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. The Committee of Teaching about the United Nations CETON welcome you to the opening of this first webinar on artificial intelligence education in the United Nations. I am Guillermo Reina, CETON's Vice Chair. We have somebody very meaningful to all of us in CETON who want to honor. Her name is Anne-Marie. Dear Anne-Marie Carson, we remember you and dedicate this critical moment in history of education and artificial intelligence in the United Nations. We hope that we wish to continue inspiring with you to continue fighting and open opportunities for a better world. Bill Torber explained to us his theory of action inquiry with new approaches on leadership and the way leaders should communicate today in today's society. Today, we have the perfect example of this theory in action with our CETON leader, an amazing human being who has been with us for so many years, and a person who personifies the human aspect, that human aspect so important today of interpersonal communication, interpersonal relationships, with very special and unique leadership dispositions from emotional intelligence and beyond. His name is Ramu Damuradan, our moderator. Thank you, Ramu, for being with us today. And Ramu, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Guillermo. Thank you for that very generous introduction and the very moving reference you made to Anne-Marie, who was really, in many ways, the wind beneath our wings for so many years, and it's difficult to think of this particular webinar without her presence, not only in the background, but the foreground. Co-creation. It's a wonderful word, a wonderful phrase. Each one of us is a product of co-creation in a biological sense. But beyond that, there is co-creation at every level around us. Even now at 11 on the Saturday morning, while all of us in the northeastern part of the United States are awaiting a winter storm, we see, as you do behind me, plants in full bloom, the co-creation, if you will, of wind and soil and rain, all working together to create a thing of beauty. And I like to think perhaps it was that sense of wonder, of the idea of just coming together, that animated the organization to which we're all committed, an organization now 80 years ago, the United Nations, co-created, if you will, in 1945, between governments and their peoples, and increasingly over the years, the vast bedrock of scholarship, education, learning, and teaching that symbolizes the work of CETON today. And I like to think this is what persuaded UNESCO to choose as the theme of the International Day of Education, which we celebrate today, the theme of the day for 2026, as the power of youth in co-creating education. And what a wonderful thought that is, that we are not here as an organization to educate alone. It's not we and them. It's us together, co-creating education, co-creating learning, co-creating understanding. And when we extend that to each one of the disciplines we learn in school or at university, we co-create amongst ourselves a better world for which we have appreciation, for which we have respect, for which we have compassion, and above all, a world that is worthy, as the United Nations Charter says, of the dignity and worth of the human person. Today's webinar is focused on the links between the United Nations and education and artificial intelligence. And when we sat about planning this, each one of us agreed that there could be no better speaker to launch our conversation than the Special Envoy of the Secretary General of the United Nations on digital and emerging technologies, Ambassador Amandeep Singh Gill. Amandeep was immediately responsive when we asked him if he could record his thoughts for us. And we would now like to share them with you.
Happy New Year. And thank you to the committee for teaching about the UN, for the invitation to share some thoughts. And I want to start by paying respect to Anne-Marie Carlson's memory for the vision in bringing together teachers and the mission of the UN in this manner. So today I wanted to talk about AI and education, especially education as it pertains to young children in schools. Now, education in its deepest sense is about empowerment. It's about bringing up citizens who are engaged in society, who think for themselves and who contribute positively. And in today's time and age, when democracies, rule of law, freedom of expression is under so much stress and strain, it's more important than ever to focus on education so that we bring up children, bring up citizens to act in society in ways that are responsible, that are empowering not only for themselves, but for those around them. Now, when it comes to artificial intelligence, it's a technology that can both empower and disempower. So we have to be very, very wise about how we are incorporating AI into education and how are we transacting learning with the use of AI tools or transacting learning about AI and data itself. So let me explain before coming to what the UN is doing in this field. So today you have a number of claims about what artificial intelligence can do in the field of education. And many of these claims are serious. And you have to think about them, and there's no escaping the AI technology wave because you have children who are using AI tools by themselves. So the largest demographic that is into the large language models such as ChatGPT is students. Students in Asia, students in countries such as Brazil are taking to ChatGPT in large numbers. They research, they do homework, they do some writing. And if used well, these are very, very empowering tools. I think there's a gap there in terms of students' use of these tools and teachers' use of these tools, a gap that we see even in regions such as Europe. So there is obviously an urgent need for teachers' training, for curriculum development and adaptation, so that in the classroom and outside the classroom, students have clear guidance about how they can use AI tools. So that is, of course, at a slightly, let's say, more mature age. But then there are, of course, programs, nationwide programs, in countries such as China or Finland, where AI literacy, as it's called, is being stepped through all classes in schools. So again, there is need for wisdom in terms of how this is done, how teachers are trained, and how teachers' autonomy and agency is not undermined, and how children's rights and their right to data privacy, which often at a younger age is not so well defined, separate from what the family's rights are. So there's need to be wise about those choices. Now, let me speak briefly about what the UN is doing in this rapidly evolving context where AI is not only impacting education, but is impacting a large number of other areas that can be collectively thought of as the Sustainable Development Goals domains. AI is also impacting human rights, political freedoms. There are risks around the misuse of AI that pertain to the UN's other two pillars. So I had mentioned sustainable development, but there's also human rights, and there is peace and security. So it's legitimate and it's urgent for the UN to be engaged on all these implications. And most importantly, since UN is the most inclusive multilateral platform on this planet, it's important for the UN to bring the world together, to think about AI, to talk about AI, to dialogue about AI, and be better informed and take the right policy actions. And in a larger kind of a multi-decade context, the UN also needs to weigh in on what is called the digital divide, which is now extending into what we can safely call the AI divide. That is the concentration of AI benefits, AI capacities in a few countries, in a few companies, and where you have large number, the majority of countries in the world who are kind of left behind in the AI race when it comes to infrastructure, the data sets, the talent, the finance, and the energy and the resources that are needed to make AI work. So this is the broader context in which the UN finds itself engaged on AI. Since the adoption of the Global Digital Compact in 2024 and preceding that, the work of the Secretary General's high-level advisory body on AI, which gave 7 clear recommendations, and some of which fortunately landed in the decisions taken by member states at the Summit of the Future through the Global Digital Compact, there is now a new momentum. There's a new, let's say, direction in terms of UN's engagement on this issue, which, by the way, goes back a few years. UNESCO's work on the ethics of AI, the discussions in Geneva on lethal autonomous weapon systems, the work at the ITU's AI for Good Summit. So there are many, many areas where the UN has been engaged, but you have this recent momentum, in a sense, upgrading of the UN's actions in this area. So coming out of the Global Digital Compact, we have 3 clear areas of action. First is the International Independent Scientific Panel. So a panel of experts, 40 experts from around the globe, who assess on a regular basis, on a continued basis, the direction, the impacts of the technology, the opportunities and the risks, so that whatever we do as individuals, as nations, as regions, is evidence-informed, is science-based, and reflects a kind of a shared knowledge of how the technology frontier is evolving and how it's impacting our societies, our economies, and our political systems. The second area is that of dialogue. I mentioned the imperative international cooperation. We've seen this in many other technologies in the past, nuclear, space, and so on, where it is useful for the world to come together and discuss some challenges that are cross-border, that impact us all, and where there are advantages from cooperating internationally. So there is going to be a global dialogue on AI governance starting in July in Geneva, back-to-back with the ITU's AI for a Good meeting, and then next year in July in New York. So there will be a rhythm, there will be an alteration between alternate convening between Geneva and New York. There'll be engagement of other stakeholders. The idea being the world can share its experiences with AI governance. And instead of small group meetings talking about AI policy, say through summits and so on, you have an inclusive platform where every country has a seat at the table. It's not for top-down prescriptive policies, but it's more of a horizontal facilitation of dialogue and mutual learning. The final piece, which will bring us back to the issue of AI education, is that of capacity building to put a floor under the AI divide. The Secretary General has come out with an analysis, a report that describes this, describes the issue of AI capacity building in terms of its demand and supply, what is needed to enable the democratization of the artificial intelligence opportunity around the world. And he's made concrete suggestions for a global fund on AI, $3 to $4 billion for urgent investments in 80, 90 countries who don't have the minimum infrastructure that's needed to train and build models of their own, but also to absorb models, say open source models, AI models that have been used elsewhere, and then adapt them to, say, their own education context, local languages, local cultural and social context, and so on. Equally important is the idea of a network of capacity building centers from around the world. So a kind of a garland of capacity building efforts where people can share, researchers and others who are developing AI can share data sets, can help build talent, cross-domain talent, for example, teachers who can use AI or AI developers who understand the education, the complex context of education. So these three areas, science, policy, and capacity, are moving forward in tandem at the United Nations. So I want to close by coming back to the theme that's most prominent for you as teachers, as leaders in education, which is how do we prepare our future generations for the AI age? Recently, I met with a young person, a high school student who put aside a promising university education, an Ivy League university education, to join an AI company. And this bright young person, in a very eloquent way, was challenging his parents and some of the adults in the room at this conversation about what's the need for university education. So as AI starts to impact many of these areas, which we thought needed education and training to be productive with in terms of work, in terms of labor markets, we will have to revise how we think about education, which areas does it occur, how, and where. So this is a huge challenge for educators everywhere. And I see the biggest challenge falling on the shoulders of early year educators, because there you're not talking about maths and computer science. You're talking about more subtle things, about how do human beings and their experience gets reduced to data, which is then used by AI to make certain assumptions, certain conclusions about what their actions are likely to be. What gets left out in terms of this abstraction from experience to data to AI models and their predictive analytics? So those deeply, deeply human skills, aptitudes, compassion, connection, creativity, education in early years would have to double down on those. This is the irony of AI. Even as we move up the abstraction chain, even as things become more automated and autonomous, we would have to ground ourselves even more firmly in our uniquely human values, human skills, some call them soft skills, and learn to be those better citizens, that goal which has always been there with us, whether it was the ancient Greeks, the ancient Indians or other civilizations that took an interest in ethics and philosophy-inspired education to bring up citizens that maintain that civilizational continuity, that maintain the human flourishing that has been the hallmark of our shared civilizational heritage. Thank you so much for this opportunity. All the very best.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Gill, and thank you for that really sweeping summation, if you will, of what you call the irony of AI, and also that very, very moving example you gave of the young student. I noticed that you were careful not to mention the gender, and it could well have been a girl student as much as a boy, who decided that there was really no need for higher education in the space of immediate life. And how, in the theme of this year's International Day, that student was going to co-create the education that would give employment and, above all, satisfaction in being able to do something in the world we live in. This whole idea of co-creation also brings to mind other areas of technological and digital advance which have distinguished our world, our teaching, and our lives. One of those, for instance, is blockchain. And one of the people who has really worked at co-creating models between blockchain technology and artificial intelligence is our next speaker, Dr. Kevin Merges, who is the Chief Global Impact Officer at the Saddle River Day School in New Jersey, and an old friend of the United Nations. Dr. Merges?
Thank you, Ramos, for those very kind words. And thank you to the CETON committee for this opportunity. We're going to start with a video from one of my students, and she's going to talk a little bit about how she uses AI.
My name is Allison Rosenson, a junior at Saddle River Day School in New Jersey. For over the past 4 years, I have been fortunate enough to delve into a world that is new or even unfamiliar to many, the world of artificial intelligence. Early on, I realized that this technology is one of the most formative developments in reaching the greatest of human potential. However, a discrepancy of knowledge and access is holding us back. This discovery led me to start Vanta AI, a research-based education lab designed to teach students about artificial intelligence. The app dives into topics like ethics, responsible use of AI in the classroom, but even basics of coding and data structures. It is important that as educators, we do not underestimate the learner while still providing age-appropriate content. Through interactive tools, lessons, and storytelling, the app doesn't just focus on what AI is, but also pushes the user to understand how it works, how it can help them, and how to use it properly. At the same time, the digital divide indicates not only a lack of tech education, but even the basic of digital devices. To champion this issue, I simultaneously started Vanta Forward Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to closing the digital divide by providing digital devices, AI education, and digital literacy to communities worldwide. The goal of UN SDG 4 of quality education for all is a mission that is deeply rooted in both of these initiatives. Looking ahead, I hope to expand both the app and nonprofit nationally and globally, partnering with educators, schools, and reaching students, even those who do not have the privilege to learn within a well-established institution. Understanding and working with AI is no longer just a privilege, it is a necessity. I truly believe that with the proper frameworks implemented for AI, along with an expansion of access and quality education, we can ensure that every individual has the opportunity to call the world of AI familiar. Thank you so much.
Now I'll show you my, Guillermo, can you give me a thumbs up so you can see the PowerPoint? Excellent, thanks. So this is an AI-generated image of our school The portion on the left isn't even created yet. They're in the process of building that. And when we look at this space, this is what the inside of the building will look like. One of the reason I want to show you is we build spaces so that the students can learn how to think, not what to think. And going forward to get students like Allison, and we'll see one more in a few minutes, we really want them to have the space to think about what the future is going to be like and where they may integrate into that throughout the world. When you think about AI in education, you have a lot of questions that are coming through for educators, for students, for districts, states, government, education groups. Everybody has to think through this. And what we really focus on is how do we get this to move to like all the other things that we do in education, move to the level where the students are starting to create. This does, AI has some unique challenges that come in. In the last week, we've seen multiple platforms released or updates on the platforms. So we need to really train the teachers and the students in how this how this can go forward and what is current, because it's constantly changing. The tools change, how we use the tools change. There are so many different ways that we can think through this, and we're fortunate. We're a small school of about 575 students from pre-K to grade 12, and that allows us to move pretty quick. We built our own AI system for the students and teachers to use, but as the undersecretary was saying, we don't have a lot of very young children using it, right? Their teachers use it to build lessons, but not as much the students engaging with it yet. We also want to engage the parents in these conversations because it's important for them to think about how the children are growing, but also do we want to put all this work onto the parents in the evening? Those are the kind of things that we have to think through with everything. So one of we'll see Sophie's video in a minute. She like Allison invented her own site. Sophie's is about a year old now. It's Writing Mastery, and it's focused on using AI to help students from kindergarten through grade 12 build up their English writing skills. And the AI focuses on giving them feedback right away. That helps the students so they can log in while they're in class if the teacher wants, or they can do it from home. So we've been able to build that up so that she now works with students in many areas. She does work on the left. You see a group of students in Miami who are in a Title I school. And then you see a group of students in Malawi who have started using the platform this year to build up their English language skills. She also works with students who are in hospitals doing pediatric cancer treatments, because often they come out of their school and they have fallen behind because they haven't been in school for several weeks or months. So she helps them stay on grade level there. We'll see her video in a moment. Allison's site is Vanta Forward. She built this whole site with AI, and she's in the process of building the platform and will release the platform. As she said, it'll help with students how to learn about AI in going forward, and that will be into 2 different sub-Saharan countries in this spring. We also have a group of students that have worked on a local LLM model for teachers, particularly those in sub-Saharan Africa, where they may not have had the training that a lot of other teachers get. And their school has a curriculum, but they don't necessarily know how to build all the lessons. So this, you can't really tell from the from the images there, but that's a little bit bigger than a cell phone. And that will be an LLM that they can ask questions. We can load in the SDGs. We can load in the entire school curriculum. And they can ask questions of this AI, and it will give them feedback. It does not need an internet connection, and we're looking at how we can run it off of batteries so that it doesn't need to be plugged in with electric source either. So those are the kind of things that we work on, getting the students to create those things. This is my contact information, and happy to talk to anybody. And you can also connect with me on LinkedIn if that's of interest, and talk about how we can connect your students so they can create, or how the students and schools on the other side could receive these kind of tools to use going forward. What I'm going to do next is turn off my slides, and we're going to see the video from Sophie about her site, Writing Mastery.
Many people fear AI or don't know how to use it effectively as a tool. However, when utilized properly, it truly has the ability to change the world. Hi, my name is Sophie Gutter, and I'm a student at Saddle River Day School. I have a deep passion for helping more students around the world receive access to equal education through the writing program I created called Writing Mastery. Writing Mastery is a revolutionary software program that helps students improve their writing skills through a structured, multisensory approach combined with the integration of AI, creating an individualized experience for each student. Writing Mastery offers 4 levels: sentence structure, simple paragraphs, extended paragraphs, and 5-paragraph essays, designed for students who write at a 1st to 12th grade level. Students are guided through structured lessons before being tasked with writing their own pieces. After a student submits each piece, they are given a score and direct AI-driven feedback in a matter of seconds, informing them on what aspects they did well on and which areas need continued growth. This targeted use of AI allows students to understand exactly how to improve their writing without the need of extensive materials and specialized writing teachers to provide them the individualized support. Not all students around the world have access to highly trained teachers, so Writing Mastery really fills this void. Recently, this past November, I won the 2025 NSHSS BMOR grant, in which I was awarded $10,000 to continue making a global impact. I can't wait to continue expanding Writing Mastery's impact to continue supporting the goal of creating equal education for all students around the world.
Thank you so much for the opportunity and getting a little glimpse at the students that I get to work with every day.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Murchison. I was particularly moved by, well, the very title, Writing Mastery, of Sophie Gutter's project, and the fact that it is really the power of communication through writing and through the incremental building up of paragraphs that she so eloquently cited that really makes a difference in communication. And what Alison Rosenson said about never underestimating the learner, which I think really animates the theme UNESCO has chosen of the power of youth in co-creating education. We now bring another co-creation aspect, this time between cognition and instructional teaching. And to address that, we have Dr. Hee-Jung Ahn, who is the chair of the Department of Education Leadership and Professional Studies at the William Patterson University in New Jersey. Dr. Ahn?
Hi, thank you so much. My talk is entitled Leveraging Generative Artificial Intelligence Tools for Inquiry-Based Science Classroom. As an initial step, I would like to make sure that we have a shared understanding of some foundational terms. So when we say AI, right, in fact, it refers to a field of computer science that is related to theory and development of a computer system capable of performing tasks that mimic our human cognitive process. And nowadays, we focus on GAI, generative AI, right? That is a subset of AI that generate new content. That's why it's powerful. So including text and images and music by learning patterns from past amounts of data on which it has been trained. Also, when we say AI power tool, for instance, a lot of teachers use Magic Power AI to generate lesson plans. So they are software applications that use AI algorithm to perform certain tasks, such as lesson planning, assessments, and to solve a problem. And ultimately, we want to train teacher about AI literacy, also students as well, not just about how to use AI tools, which includes understanding AI, right? What that means is that we need to understand what AI is, how it works, and including its history, right? And when we say evaluating AI, we have to have ability to critically evaluate AI outputs. And also when we say using AI, that involves three things: interacting with AI, creating with AI, problem solving with AI. So I actually added a full URL here if you want to learn more about AI literacies. So my talk will primarily is about using AI today. So in the US, right, most school districts follow new generation science standard. We call it NGSS. This way of teaching emphasizes three-dimensional science teachings, which include science engineering practices. We call it EP. And I want to focus on practice 1 and practice 4. So how we can use AI to support question generations and collecting, analyzing, and interpreting data. In order to implement inquiry-based classroom, right, as you see here, first thing that we have to teach students is that how to generate good questions. But research shows we don't spend enough time to teach students how to generate good questions. We tend to assume they know how to generate questions. So that poses a lot of challenges and problems. So I want to pose a question to everybody here. How confident do you feel in modeling and teaching students how to ask higher order questions? And what kind of supports and resources or example would help you feel more confident? So I want to share one tool. So the name is Smile Ask. It's easy to remember, right? So that was developed by Dr. Paul Kim Tim. He used to work at Stanford University, and it provides instant feedback based on Bloom's taxonomy. And Bloom's taxonomy have 6 categories, but they combine evaluating and creating. So if I click on that, for the sake of time, I already enter questions. So once you enter questions, right, and submit questions, you can see that, okay, this was classified as a level 3 question. And also it provides the reason why this is a level 3 questions. In addition to that, it also provides suggestion for improvement. You can also enter questions in other languages, more than English. So they're going to translate this and then also provide feedback. As you see here, this sentence includes grammatical errors. They will fix that for you, right? And then also provide the feedback. So how can you use this? Perhaps you can start simple. Have students begin with the level 1 and 2, right? And then revise them to reach levels 4 and 5. And then reflect upon real feedback. Ask a student to explain why their question received a certain level and how they improved it. Maybe pair students to evaluate and discuss each other's questions, offering justification for their ratings and suggestion for improvement. And you can track their growth. Have students submit their before and after questions with a reflection on how their thinking evolves. So ultimately, we can use a smile to help students develop thinking skills, right? Another thing I want to focus on is that we can also use AI tool to generate, synthesize real-world large-scale data sets. This approach supports implementation of CR model, claim, evidence, and reasoning model, particularly in the context where direct experimentation is impractical or impossible due to many constraints such as cost, safety, geography, or time. So I'm going to use ChatGPT for this. I already ran this prompt to save time. I use Wayne in New Jersey, where William Patterson University located. So I asked for, please find the average daylight hours for each month in Wayne, New Jersey, make a table. And you can see it generate table. And then after that, I asked them actually to convert this table to a line chart. So you can see that, right? And let me go next slide. You can also ask, please create a table of floods that occurred in the US over the past 5 years. And I used to do this kind of activity in my class with in-service teachers. Students have to choose one city, right? And then after that, they have to click on this table, and then they have to plug numbers in Excel or template I provided. Then after that, as you see this here, you can see different shapes of the chart, and you can start to see the trend. But what I can do right now is that I can ask ChatGPT to generate tables for me and gather data for me. So this is a chart for Anchorage. You can also see maximum and minimum data and the difference. And Quito sits almost on like equator, right? So as you see here, the difference between maximum daylights and minimum daylights is very minimal. And you can also see average daylights hours for each month in Sydney and Seoul, and make a table. So this graph show upward curves were sitting in northern hemisphere and downward curves were sitting in southern hemisphere during the same time period, reflecting opposite season patterns. So as you just saw, you can use data and also their analysis to really form the reason, right? And then you can also ask a further question, what's the relationship between latitude and number of daylight hours on Earth? I already added actually answer. The farther a place is from equator, the greater change in daylight hours throughout the year, because you see so many different kinds of curves and data, right? You can start to see the trend. And also you can use ChatGPT to visualize a trend raw data. So you can upload raw data, right? I used to check this website during COVID-19, John Hopkins, right? So that I can check, confirm the cases, how many people are recovered, and etc. So I assign students to analyze data in a country in each continent. So these particular students gather data, confirm the cases, total death, and total recover from the country located in Asia. Then after that, you can also ask ChatGPT visualize the trends. Then you can start to see the chart, you can start the summary, you can also see correlation analysis result. You can also ask a further question, well, do country make a difference? And then they'll give you possible, factor. So perhaps, maybe, right? And then you might want to generate, death rate. You might want to generate a recovery rate. They give you some sort of clue, the tips to think further. And then perhaps certain country may have strong healthcare system, early intervention. That's why they show the low death rate, high recovery rates, and etc. Right? And then they keep asking further question. This is not my prompt, right? Would you like me to compute, visualize those death and recovery rates by country from your data sets? That you can see death rate orange, and the recovery rate actually you can see the green bars. So, the bottom line is that um, by teaching science this way, you can help students develop, form better claim evidence reasoning. Example, you as a teacher also use this as a teaching tool when you prepare for your lesson plans. So in summary, AI may reduce distance thinking when it replaces reasoning. However, it can also enhance thinking when used as an intelligent tool rather than merely an answering machine, right? And I want to pose also two questions to everybody that we need to really consider. How can the UN help shape global vision for using AI to strengthen inquiry-based science educations, moving away from didactic science teaching, right? While promoting equity, ethical use, evidence-based learning. But the UN cannot do this alone, so we have to work together. How might the UN collaborate with the university, researchers, and educators like you to build a global capacity for responsible AI integration in science educations? So thank you so much, and I can be reached at this my email address.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Ahn. I think the very eloquent premise with which you started, the power of the question and the hierarchy, if you will, the order of questions, is something that we often underestimate, the idea of always seeking answers rather than framing the right questions. And we have so much to support us today, as you so eloquently pointed out. We have data at our command. We have the first order of data. We have a more complicated second and third level of specialization. But ultimately, it's all in how we frame what we are seeking that shapes what we get that is sought. I am also very moved by the last reference you make, and perhaps if we have time at the end of our conversation today, I would ask you and the other panelists to reflect just briefly for a moment on that question. What can the UN do in this regard? Because after all, this is the Committee for Teaching about the United Nations, and all that we are discussing today and reflecting upon today ultimately dovetails into what Amandeep Gill so eloquently spoke about, the idea of the United Nations as not only a force for change, but a repository of hope. So thank you so much for that presentation. Let me now turn to Dr. Olivia Gauthier. And I think in her case, I see the co-creation, if you will, as that between special education needs and the learning of English as a necessary language to be able to take us further in pedagogy. Dr. Gauthier is with the Chartered Dream School, and she will share with us her thoughts about AI within the context of special education and also linguistic and language learning.
Thank you so much for that introduction. So thinking about AI within the elementary school setting, thinking through special education, language acquisition, and how can we use as a tool to further support learning. I work in a school in East Harlem, a charter school that serves grades pre-K through 12. At my site, we specifically serve grades pre-K through 5th grade for our elementary school. And this is my 8th year working at that school in education. So I've gotten to see the trajectory of AI as it was first introduced into our school and how it's grown. So I've also come to see how prominent AI has become in the larger educational landscape. And when I think about tech literacy now, it can't just mean students having access to a laptop or being able to use a tablet for a few minutes a day. It has to mean understanding AI. So how to use it responsibly, how to question it, how to verify sources and what it produces for you, and also how to leverage it to deepen learning instead of shortcut it. So for me, I really had to shift my mindset and the conversation from should we use AI to how do we teach and lead with it well. So today specifically, I'm going to speak about 2 AI programs that I've utilized in the elementary school setting, ChatGPT, which is probably the most popular AI platform used today, as well as Project Read, which is a reading platform for phonics, fluency, and comprehension. So in my school, we have a specific block for 30 minutes every day that we called WIN. And WIN stands for What I Need, and that is our targeted intervention block for students who are performing below grade level in order to get the supports that they need. So for example, the one way we use AI is for ChatGPT to generate lesson plans for that specific intervention block. So over here, you can see that a teacher is able to give us a very specific prompt. So I need a 4th grade fiction passage about a school career fair. Make it decodable at a 3rd grade reading level. Include an image to pair with the text, 250 words. And that's really key. The teacher's able to give the grade level, they're able to give the reading level, the topic, and interests. And then in return, ChatGPT returns a passage that meets the instructional needs of that particular group. So for example, if you have a student who's in 5th grade, but they're reading at a 2nd or 3rd grade reading level, we're still able to keep the content age appropriate while also making the text accessible to them at their specific reading level. And then on the right is where it becomes really powerful for that intervention block. ChatGPT is then generating the teacher-facing plan. So it includes advanced vocabulary preparation with parts-of-speech and morphology, quick definitions, the why behind background knowledge, so teachers know exactly what to emphasize and can anticipate what students might struggle with. It even suggests visuals or props or simple images that they can pull out from the passage as they get themselves ready to teach this lesson. It builds a minute-by-minute scripted lesson with teacher talk, student responses, turn and talk prompts. So teachers know how to say, give me a thumbs up or down if you think this, or turn and tell your partner this idea. And this kind of scripting is really helpful when we're trying to make intervention consistent across classrooms, support new teachers, and also reduce planning time. So my school specifically, we have an AI task force who has been working very hard to create GPTs that can be used within our school. So actually, my school, Dream, was the first K through 12 school system in New York and the first charter school system nationally to implement ChatGPT Enterprise across our campuses. So we're really utilizing it to differentiate instruction within our school, because within our population, 25% of our students are students with identified disabilities and IEPs. So we want to think about how do we make learning accessible for all students, and how do we equip teachers with the materials to do that? So another platform that I've utilized in my practice is Project Read. So Project Read is a website that focuses on phonics, comprehension, and fluency for reading. So one of the features of Project Read is that it can generate decodable passages. So for example, I can put into Project Read, I want an end of year 1st grade level passage. I want it to be a story about a kid who goes to the park with a friend from school. I can also put the target word count, thinking about my students and their specific needs, and it generates a passage for me. So it's age appropriate, but also feels engaging. And it also means less time searching. I worked previously as a reading interventionist, and there were times where I was sitting down and thinking, I need this story with these specific phonics skills, and I can't just find it. So I have to make it myself. And this allows me to now generate passages with the specific needs of my students in mind within seconds. And then it really supports differentiation, right? So I can have multiple versions of a passage, same topic, but then different complexity. So students can participate at the same time with the same theme while reading at their specific accessible level. And that's really powerful in intervention groups when we know often students are spread across different skill levels. On the right-hand side, Project Read also generated this teacher-facing evaluation sheet, which has the passage line by line, how many words are in each line, so that when a teacher is listening to a student read, they can actually follow along and mark off and data track how a student is doing on their reading fluency, which is going to be really powerful when you think about the child find process, RTI, which is response to intervention, making sure we have all that data so that if we're making recommendations for extra supports for that student, we have the data to back it. Another way that Project Read can be used is to coach students on their reading. So it functions as a real-time reading coach for elementary students. And I'm thinking about during centers when a teacher has a small group and you have other groups working independently during or during the intervention block. So what we're seeing here is for students who need a lot of practice with decoding and blending, but also need that immediate corrective feedback. So Project Read supports students by giving them a structured practice. So if the teacher is working with another group, this independent time becomes meaningful practice time and not just busy work. So over here, this left image, on Project Read, you're able to enter a word and then Project Read will map it out for you into the separate sounds. So here I put the word walk, which we know A is not making its usual ah sound in the English language. It's saying ah. That L and K, a student has to know that the L is silent. And so a student's able to put the word in, they click the microphone button here, they say the word, and then Project Read gives them that immediate feedback and shows them which sounds they got correct in the word and which sounds they missed. If a student is not sure, for example, what sound a letter or a digraph or blend makes, they're able to click on the video button and then a video pops up of someone saying the sound with the focus on the mouth so students can see how their mouths would actually be shaped. So again, thinking of English language learners, students with speech or language impairments, having that at-bat and that practice, that immediate feedback to support their learning. When I also think about Project Read as supporting students, particularly in East Harlem, I think about students who are first generation American. I think about students who, within East Harlem, we have a lot of students who their parents speak exclusively Spanish. And so when they go home and it's time for them to do homework, we've had parents express to us, I actually can't help with the reading homework because I'm not fluent in English. So how can I support my scholar? So a student could take Project Read home with them and they can use that for reading feedback and be able to work on those reading skills, even if their parent is not necessarily able to help them with those specific skills. So like that's something I think about with equity, right? All students having access to high quality literacy instruction in order to become better readers, because we know that being a reader gives you access to the world around you, gives you access to information. And it's really important and top of mind for us at my school that our students are strong readers and that they can engage with text, with information around them authentically and meaningfully. So a quote that I always come back to and think about a lot is this idea of talent is equally distributed, opportunity is not. So within my school community, just to give you some stats, 92% of our students qualify for free or reduced lunch. As I mentioned, 25% of our student population are identified as special education students, so students with disabilities, with IEPs. And we have 71% of our student population who are first generation college students. So as I think about AI fitting into the global education, the future of global education, I think about it the same way as I would like a really amazing paraprofessional in the classroom. So something that helps me reach every child, especially when time and resources are tight. So as someone within the elementary school setting, I see it as a tool to personalize learning. So giving a student extra time and extra practice with phonics at home. Reading directions aloud for a learner with disabilities, offering math support. It can help me plan faster, differentiate, and spot patterns in student misunderstandings so that I can reteach it sooner. And as I think about our tie-in today with the UN, I think about the values that the UN emphasizes. So specifically quality education and reduce inequalities. So AI has this amazing opportunity to reach out to students who may not have the resources immediately there for them. Something I have top of mind, of course, is if only some schools have devices, if only some have reliable internet or safe platforms, then AI could widen those gaps. And we also, of course, can't trade convenience for privacy because kids' data and dignity matter. But as someone who is watching how the education landscape is changing every day, how AI is being integrated more and more, and how it is, of course, becoming a part of our larger landscape. I think about how students can use it to their advantage to have every point of opportunity and access that they can. Thank you so much. And then if you would like to reach out to me, there's my email.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Gauthier. I was really struck by that early phrase of yours about age appropriate, because in this whole welter of technology and of being able to work with AI, we sometimes ignore the fact that there is still a particular categorization of age for which the technology can work and is appropriate. And it's not just because a person who happens to be 4 years old has the same degree of access as someone who's 16 years old that all things are equal. And thank you for the fascinating exposition of Project READ and all it does at such a micro level. I should also add about age appropriate that I discover in trying to put on and mute my mic. I gather that I put all kinds of red dots on the screen. So clearly Zoom is not entirely my age appropriate, and I must apologize. So thank you, Dr. Gauthier. And now let me turn to Dr. Pascal Valette, who is the principal of the junior high school at the United Nations International School. And he has a co-creation, if you will, between social and economic development on a global scale and the particular idea of learning at the individual student's level. Dr. Valette?
Bien, thank you. So I am not Dr. Valette, I'm Pascal Valette, but you're not the first person to call me doctor, so I thank you. But I have more work to become a doctor. So you need to put my screen, full screen, my camera. Thank you so much. So I'm Pascal Valette, I'm the junior school principal, and I was very interested. It's always difficult to be the last one, but at the same time, the last one get inspired by others. And it's very interesting how what I'm going to share with you connect with many things that was shared here. In the introduction, we talk about the co-creation and looking at also the dignity, the human dignity. And that's something that I'm going to explore here. In some ways, how we can, as a school, and I'm going to share my screen with you right now. Wait a second. How we can, in some ways, with technology, regain our humanity. And that's, in some ways, a paradox. So the Undersecretary talked about the gap between students and teachers. And I think, Dr. Han, that's something I saw you talk about, how we need to be able to train the teachers. But I would say also that if we believe that we need to train teachers because students are using it and we want the teachers to be able to stay up to date, we need also to think about how administrators are using it, because ultimately they're the one who are going to create this environment where the students are going to thrive with their teachers with artificial intelligence, and that's something that I'm going to share with you. And it was very inspiring. So the example with Sophie, what she has created, and in some ways I'm wondering also if Olivia also you pretty much align also with what Sophie is doing, is the capacity to create. Your application is impressive, and I believe you have created it with the assistance of artificial intelligence, probably Google AI Studio. I can be wrong, but I kind of like recognize some of the style that Google AI Studio utilize, and that's something also I'm going to talk about here in my presentation. So I'm going to look at it through the lens of the administrator. I'm going to share with you some experience that we have at the United international school to try to create an environment where the technology is going to allow us to regain this humanity. But before that, I think everything we have talked about, there is some really fundamental question and philosophical question that we need to be able to address in order to have a usage of artificial intelligence that is going to support human flourishing. And Olivia, you talk about deeper understanding, and that's a concept, a philosophical concept that I'm going to explore also with you briefly. I have few minutes, so I think I will need more time to navigate through everything that we need to discuss, but I will do my best here. To my entry point here as administrator, we are often overloaded with a tsunami of tasks, and those tasks take us away from building relationship with teachers, with the families, and with our students. And we often say, you know, I have things to do. I have emails to answer. I have form to fill out. I have a field trip to organize to make sure that all our students are going to be safe. And those tasks are crucial in order for the school to be able to operate, but take us away from the reality of what happened in the class, from the possibility to spend more time with the student. And so a lot of things that we have done at UNIS in my division in the junior school is to try to see how we can regain some time by integrating the technology. And when we think about integration of the technology and artificial intelligence, there is things also that never change. What is good leadership? And so no matter what, if you use artificial intelligence, there is some fundamental. And I mentioned that because I think sometimes we might lose track of what is good leadership, what is good instruction, because the result of using artificial intelligence can be so incredible in some ways in terms of output that we might forget, but wait a second, learning has not changed because of artificial intelligence. Leading a school, operating a school has not changed because of artificial intelligence. There is still things that are very important. Making sure that you create a safe environment for everyone so everyone can speak up, everyone can share their own ideas to contribute to the development of the school. The concept of accountability, the idea of transparency, and the importance to be able to share a common knowledge. So when we talk about our students, we talk the same language. And so those important values in terms of leadership, they are the things that are the foundation of what we have created with artificial intelligence and integrating artificial intelligence. Some other element, and I'm going to choose to just navigate through three concepts that I found extremely important. This one is from the philosopher McLuhan, the Canadian. He say, we are the tool that we behold, we shape the tools, and the tools shape us. And I think this is absolutely fundamental, because anything that we're going to design with artificial intelligence is going to transform us. We can see in the history of humanity, anything that we have created has transformed the humanity. And so this is absolutely crucial. If we go too fast, if we don't think enough, we might create some tools that are going to transform education in a way that might not be the most beneficial for the student. So we need to pause here and we need to reflect on the tools that we're using and we are creating. Another very important element, when we use ChatGPT, it creates some language. However, as the philosopher Austin is saying, the language is not only a description, it's also something that creates action, that creates transformation. And so anything that is going to come out of ChatGPT, if we use it to create a lesson plan like Olivia was describing, or if we use it to create in 5 minutes of thinking a 50-page policy to support a better organization of field trip, this is not only language, it's action. And so we need to be very, very thoughtful on how we use this technology that not only create language, but is going to have a transformative impact and give us a direction on how we're going to act. The last element, and I will connect this one with what you are saying, Olivia, when you're talking about deeper understanding. And that's probably one that is the most crucial. It's from Hannah Arendt. And what Hannah Arendt talked about is about after a big moment of thinking, there is a moment of contemplation. And this is extremely important before being into the action. The moment of contemplation, it is time for her of understanding. But we are today in a world where we can create so fast and go into the action so fast that we're losing this moment of contemplation. And so we need also, as administrators, be very mindful on how fast do we need to go. How fast are we going to put the student on AI for them to be able to ask a question and have an answer? We need to have also this moment of deep thinking, this moment of contemplation in order to be able to build understanding. And this is what artificial intelligence in some ways can challenge. So I agree with everyone before. We can do some amazing things with artificial intelligence, and it's quite incredible. But we need also to be very thoughtful about the machine that we create and we use that is going to transform us, about the fact that the output that we get is going to be transformed into action, and the fact that it might take us away also sometime from this moment of contemplation. Now, with all this in mind, and if I share it with you, is to describe also that when we design system at UNIS, we try also to take those elements in consideration because we know the consequence of what we're going to create. And so we have tried to think about all this administrative load. And I'm going to give you 3 examples. The first one is this example is something that we have started designing 5 years ago. We were not happy about the way that we were handling incidents when things were happening, and we couldn't find anything on the market that was allowing us to be able to keep track of things happening, work on communicating with the parents, take in consideration those elements of bias that we wanted to be able to flag in order to identify if there will be some discrimination, bias that can build at the beginning of the student build language, we can see some form of bias. So there is a lot of elements that we are not satisfied on the market, and we decided to create our own customized system. And this has been probably the biggest transformation I've observed in a school setting. We have integrated artificial intelligence, and the way that the artificial intelligence is working, and that's why I shared this example, is more in the background. What Themis is doing in some ways, it's communicating with the people that need to be informed about something happening. Being able to remind to a counselor every day at 8 a.m., 12 p.m., and 4 p.m., what are the cases that are open that they need to look into. Trying to support teachers to reflect on what can be the logical consequence. Encouraging the teachers to be able to identify the fact that there is different tier of intervention. Giving access to the teachers to a bot that allow them to ask some question, and that's the common knowledge here. The system is going to tell them, based on the incident, you can look into this direction. You can communicate to the parent that way. You can use this logical consequence. That's the way that you can repair the situation. And so all this is working in the back. And what I've observed is we probably, with my assistant principal, have some tier 3, so the biggest case that were coming to our attention in the past, probably have been cut by 75 to 90% over the last 4 years, which is a really, really striking numbers. But more than that, what we've seen is that everybody from the playground assistant to the homeroom teacher in the class are knowledgeable, or communicate, and understand the tier of intervention, and are able to all participate to support the student in feeling well. And so that's a first example here that we have designed. And this is one example of automatic communication. So people doesn't spend their time to communicate. They spend their time of reflecting on how we support the student. And the technology take care of the communication and save countless hours. A second example that is a bit more basic, this one, where we can use artificial intelligence, is on report card, for example. So we have designed a system that allows us to do some analytic, etc., as Dr. Anne was sharing, and as the example for Olivia, so that we can put some input and we get some output. This is the principle here. When we have we put a draft comment and we can generate from there based on our guideline, and our guideline is a structure, but it's also a way we communicate about student growth, and the artificial intelligence help the teachers. So why we're doing that? First, because we prefer the teacher to not go on or their personal ChatGPT, because then the data is not protected. Second, we can design a system that can do exactly what we want the system to do. At UNIS, we write a certain way the report cards. It might be different in the international school in Singapore. So we control it. We use the voice to text also. And so the result for that is the teacher, rather than to be spend 50% of the time of trying to write very properly because they might be judged on the way they write, but we don't really care in some ways to judge the teachers on how the teachers write. We want to know how the student is doing when the student write. The teacher can focus on the assessment, can focus on reflecting on the student. And so a teacher was sharing, for example, she has all the assessment on the desk, and she was talking, she was posing, she was just talking about the student, the way she was seeing the student based on the assessment. And then when she clicked on the button, she get the command that is written the way that align with our guideline, allowing her to spend not 50% of the time of her time of reflecting on how the student is doing, but 80% of the time on reflecting on the student is doing. And the last example I want to share with you is Genius. It's another way also to use artificial intelligence. And so it's a system that allows us to place the student. We collect some information about the student. We collect also friendship. I cannot show you too much because it's a confidential data. And after with all this information, we have a Kanban and we can place the student. Now, the reason why I share that with you is because I anticipate that this system is probably going to allow us to save on the total numbers of hours per person who are working on class placement, maybe 100 or 150 hours. It's 100 and 150 hours that we're going to be able to allocate to student, to relationship, to reflecting a bit more about how we can support our student, rather than a tedious task to place a student. The result also will be much better because the teachers will be more informed. And again, why do I share this example with you? And that's a bit to go back to what Sophie was sharing, this student. When she has designed this system, create a system to support other students. We were able to design this system with one person and 15 hours of work. It would have taken 1 year ago a team of 3 people, maybe 3 weeks of work. And it has been created using, I use my voice to create it. So I talk to my computer to create this system. And so that's the era of making here, where we can see also students being empowered to be able to create, not knowing necessarily any line of code, to be able to create. And so that brings some lot of optimism, like we can create anything. But when we go back to the concept of an around on the contemplation, we might create things also that we don't understand. And I will share with you here an example. I have a friend who is very advanced in AI and coding and etc. He used Gemini to create some line of code, and he realized that there is a line of code that he couldn't understand. He gave it to a colleague without telling him that he used Gemini, and the colleague looked at him and said, "What do you mean by that? Why this line of code?" And after a few seconds, he said, "Oh no, okay, I got it. He probably didn't get it either." So there is like 2 very high experts that were not able to understand why Gemini would have created a specific line of code. And that's for me also a warning here for us. We need to continue to understand what we're doing, what we're going to create. And if we do that, we may be able to have better operation, be able to get back our time, be able to increase the trust, deepen our relationship, and allow our students to thrive. And so if we really do it well and we shape them well, maybe we're going to really be able to get all the benefit of the artificial intelligence. But I do believe in this very short time that it's necessary for us also to confront ourselves to all those also essential existential question on this relationship, this collaboration that we're going to have between the human and artificial intelligence.
Thank you so much, Professor Pascal Vallée. May I now invite 2 of your young students, Maya and Madison, to share their videos with us?
Absolutely.
So it's important to use AI responsibly. I'm Maya Vitar. I'm 16 years old and I go to the United Nations International School. I come from Lebanon and Palestine. And personally, AI has had a great impact on me. I love it and it teaches me a lot of things. Sometimes it's hard to just like search the internet. It doesn't have all your answers. So AI is a great tool for learning, but of course at the same time, it can get abused. So it's important to use AI responsibly. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Madison McWilliams. I'm 16 years old. I go to the United Nations International School, and I'm Dominican, Puerto Rican, and Nigerian. I know AI doesn't really affect my life as much as it affects other students in my school because I don't use it for like homework and tests or anything like that. But I've realized that people tend to rely on AI, and when they do that, they stop really using their brains to like learn as much. So that's why I don't use it myself.
Now, that's a very honest answer. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And and also, Professor Barry, what you mentioned about a very profound thought that learning has not changed AI, and it remains a safe space depending on how safe we want to make it. Also, when you were introducing the Janus model to us, which really seems extremely exciting and promising, you use the very important word thoughtful. And we talk about education in terms of originality, in terms of ideas, but we do have to return, I would imagine, finally to the idea of thoughtfulness, not only because of investing thought in what we study, but investing thought in the lives of those for whom we care. I would also like at this moment to express our gratitude to Matteo and Oliver, whose sketches were shown at the very beginning of this program. Each of our presenters has mentioned resources and apps which are relevant to their work and which might be helpful in our own. We will be putting these together in the report of the conference, which will be available on our website. We have about 10 minutes to go for closing. I would like to do two things. First of all, I would like to ask any members of the CETON family who are joined with us today if they have any thoughts or comments to make. And then I would like to invite each of our panelists to speak for very briefly, perhaps for just a minute or so, about the United Nations. And I think back to an article that Anne-Marie Carlson, whom we honor today, had written as far back as December 2013. The article was called, "Is it still necessary to teach about the United Nations?" And I remember her saying that, like all human institutions, it stumbles from its imperfections. Education efforts must highlight its successes and acknowledge its limitations and weaknesses that affect its performance. And I would like our panelists to briefly reflect on where the United Nations is today in the context of this larger question of education and artificial intelligence, and also where you would like it to be. Before I turn to the panel, do we have any members of CETON who wish to speak? Well, no one immediately, but we may have someone later. So let me begin with Dr. Kevin Murders. Your thoughts on AI education on the UN.
Excuse me. I think that the UN is the best place to talk about the global community as it relates to AI. We saw a couple of surveys in the last week come out that the interest in working with AI among people in the global South is at a higher percentage than in the people in that were surveyed in Europe and North America. So how do we get the resources and the education to the people that are most interested in learning about it and possibly using it to go forward? And I think that, most of the speakers talked about that equity. How do we spread that around? How do we make sure that the bias are removed and everything is trained well to get there? I think those are I think the UN is the perfect place to have those discussions as we look at the global change that's coming as AI continues to grow every day.
Thank you, and thank you for introducing that element of equity, which is an often used but also equally often misused word. And I think the point that Amandeep Gill, the Special Envoy, said at the beginning was that ultimately when we think about AI and education and teaching, we're also thinking about a world which is ruled by equity rather than a world which is ruled by, as was once said, the law and the power of the jungle. So thank you very much for that. Dr. Ahn?
Sure. I have many thoughts in my mind at this moment, but I just want to pick one thing that I experienced recently. Because even United States, there are some school districts that don't have limited, internet connections. So how can we support country with limited internet connectivity in utilizing AI tools to enhance or transform education opportunities. Because we talk about all of this right now, but if they don't have any internet connections, right, they cannot really utilize all of the resources, also AI power tool. So that is a big question that I have in my mind at this moment.
That's a fascinating thought, and not to put too alarmist a picture on it, but one can think of, when the internet came into being, there was a degree of apprehension that some governments, particularly totalitarian governments, might choose to withhold electricity from their people because they did not want them to use electricity to access the internet. And now the canvas has grown far wider, where a government which seeks to control its people might not give them the physical power to be able to access AI, its tools, and its possibilities. So thank you for that flag, and thank you for that very practical pointer of what the United Nations as an institution and collectively as a group of 193 governments can do. Dr. Gauthier?
So I think about the role the UN can take in relation to like AI in education, almost as a referee and like setting those guardrails, because we don't want AI to become low quality instruction, and we don't want it to become this idea of like invading privacy or like unnecessary surveillance, but like establishing really clear rules on privacy, on data collection, on transparency, and like keeping top of mind the idea that AI should support teachers, not replace them. So I know there's also got like a big conversation there about kind of AI having too much of a role in education. And I know like the big holdup we've had at my school in this conversation is like, we don't want AI to replace critical thinking for our scholars as we think about them becoming, community members and like world leaders and like doing all these things. So I think about how the UN can kind of act as like that referee and buffer as we implement AI like at a broader, in a broader way, while also keeping equity top of mind, thinking about the students who are most likely to be left out, right? As we think about AI expanding, so students with disabilities, language minorities, displaced students, under-resourced schools. So keeping all of those in mind as we think about how AI can be rolled out in a way that is equitable.
Thank you. That's a very, very perceptive and important, because I also recall that when Ambassador Amandeep Gill was speaking, he gave us a whole, I wouldn't say hierarchy, but a whole series of meetings and convenings that the United Nations will be undertaking over the next couple of years in the field of AI, including alternate meetings every summer between Geneva and New York, the idea of a scientific panel, and also the idea of reconciling, if you will, the inevitable tension between business and commerce on the one hand, and education and knowledge on the other. So I'm very grateful for that perspective that you've shared with us, quite obviously rooted in your day-to-day experience with students and their teaching. And now let me turn to the gentleman who dare not be called a doctor, Mr. Pascal Vallet.
First, I think we need to recognize that the UN has been on the forefront with the work of the UNESCO. In 2023, they were probably the first consistent AI guideline in education that were published, that have inspired the work of many schools, many international schools, I know, looked into it to be able to design their own AI guidelines. So that was quite remarkable. I think if we think about UN and AI, I need to do a little aparté. In some ways, AI is way beyond the question of education. The chair of our school is in charge of the nuclear question at the UN, and you can imagine the work that needs to be done here on artificial intelligence, guardrail, I was saying, Olivia, on using artificial intelligence related to weapon of mass destruction. So a huge work for the UN, of course, on that if they do it right, we may be able to talk about AI in education. And so they need to do it right. I think the question of when I think about the UN and their role here, and for everything that has been said, we I very agree, so I'm going to go in another direction here, is there is in some ways an existential question. I'm going to give you a very brief example of what AI can do. AI can go one way or the other, and the UN can allow us, help us to go one way or the other. One way is a good way, another way is not a good way. I was invited in university with some linguistics in France, where they wanted to be able to demonstrate that AI will not be able to translate because that's their field. They were hoping to be able to see that. And I give them a very small example. I translate a poem from Spanish to English from Garcia Lorca, beautiful poem with beautiful color and beautiful work from ChatGPT. Is doing really great. And then after I ask to ChatGPT, now you're going to translate this poem, but just imagine that you are coming from this tiny island, Rosal Island, in Papua New Guinea, and your mother tongue is the Yele. It's a language that is spoken by 10,000 people. And the translation was very different. The translation did not use any color. And the Yele is a language who has only 3 colors: the white, the red, and the black. And so there is no more green, there is no more silver. And it was a very beautiful translation that was metaphoric. And the language of the Yele is metaphoric, because when they're going to say the green, they're going to say the hat of the tree. And so AI was able here to demonstrate to those professors that there is a sort of cultural sensitivity. So the work of the UN to be able to make sure that the models that are going to be developed are going to take in consideration and help the country who cannot develop today their own model is not only important on an economical perspective, educational perspective. It is important to be able to conserve the language of the world. And the language, and if we trust what Wittgenstein is saying, that the limit of my world or the limit of my language, that means the language defines the world. If we are losing those very important language that are spoken by a very minority of people, because those big models are going to push language that highlight specific culture, we are going to lose the richness, the diversity of the world. So I think what was describing by the Undersecretary on the work that the UN is doing to work with this country, to fund this country, is absolutely crucial and need to be done.
Thank you so much for that very powerful reflection on language as a means not only of identity, but of change. And also the idea of how ultimately so much of what the United Nations does, so much of what we do in the United Nations cause is a metaphor. If we spend our time thinking about things too literally and working upon it within the confines of what we can see, feel, hear, and touch, then we lose a great deal of the potential, the promise, and the beauty. Thank you for putting that so eloquently. My gratitude to the other panelists for all their contribution, to Maya, Madison, Matthew, Oliver, and of course, Alison Rosenson and Sophie Gutter for their presentations. I think we have really anchored ourselves well in what we intend to be the first of a series of at least 3 webinars over the course of 2026 on the larger question of education, AI, and the United Nations. And we have a great deal to go forward with. This has been a wonderful beginning. And I do hope that all of you listening in and participating will share with us ideas you have on what we could do in our future webinars, the focus we should try and achieve, the people we should invite, and the effort we can jointly make to realize the possibilities inherent in this vast, bountiful area. Please keep an eye on our website for the resources that were mentioned by panelists and speakers today, and for a continuing conversation. On behalf of the Committee for Teaching about the United Nations, our gratitude for your joining us this Saturday morning. Have a wonderful weekend and a wonderful year ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Ramo. Thank you, everyone, for making this possible. This is our webinar, your webinar, as this is not the end. It's amazing how this is going to be the beginning of so many different actions to take. In behalf of all the CTON members and friends, thank you so much for your time, for our speakers, your amazing work transforming the life of so many students here and around the world. Thank you so much for your time, your expertise. I feel very honored and grateful to take Anne-Marie Carson's torch to continue enlightening our path to fight for a better world and be co-creators of a better world. Many things resonate in my head right now, especially reflective practice and reflective learning from the students, to be able for them to reflect, and also from we as teachers to be able to stop, to pause, and reflect what we are doing, to be present, really present in the moment with our students. Definitely so many different things to learn today. And have a wonderful weekend. People in this area who will have a dark cloud on the roof, there is always calm after the storm. Peace, stay warm, and thank you so much, and have a wonderful weekend. Thank you, everyone.